Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive, said author Howard Thurman. Welcome to the second season of the Vulnerable Power Show. Heart-to-heart, unscripted dialogues with world leaders who are shining examples of the unfolding leadership ascension. Hear from these creative leaders and visionary entrepreneurs who have traversed deep leadership transformations and inner alchemy, actualizing their vision for a better world. We share raw insights and practical tips so you too can transform painful experiences and old energies as fuel for your leadership growth and collective good. Join us and listen in so we can all bring hope, inspire transformation, uplift the world, and show what is possible through heart-centered, vulnerable leadership. As Margaret Mead, anthropologist, once said, "Never believe that a few caring people can't change the world. For indeed, that's all who ever have." Greetings everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Vulnerable Power Show, Season 2. What is this Vulnerable Power Show, and who are you? Very boisterous and excited guy on the screen. Well, I'm Hasadegi, if you don't know. I am the host, and this is not only a show, this is an immersive experience. This is where we spotlight leaders that are ascending, that have done this work, that are stepping into their light, embodying it, and bringing forth their calling for a more ascended, a more higher vibrational planet. And that doesn't have to be fully esoteric, because in this episode, we have a very, very dear friend and soul sister who's doing work in a very pragmatic way. So here we like to inspire, we like to encourage, and we like to empower wherever you are at in your leadership journey, to share with you insights, tips, and experiences from a heart-centered leader that's done the work and has stepped into their beingness and their presence so that you too can do it and wherever you're at, ascend. So as always, I love to start with how I met the guest and how our paths have actually converged. Now, this is one of those grab your popcorn, sit back, because this goes back to before when Haas started his sabbatical. If you're a regular and you've seen the show, you've heard my experiences and stories. If not, well, you better go back and catch up. Give you a little FOMO there. Her and I met, Stephani Lucas and I met in San Diego, and I was still a full-time lawyer. And I still don't remember, it had to be about probably 2000, and I want to say 12, 13-ish, where we were both heading into a charity event. And here's the funny irony. I was invited by 3 different people, and later somebody who's also her sun sign, astrological, another Cancer, became a client, was this keynote speaker, Andrea Yoder Clark, who you may or may not know. So all these synchronicities aside, we met in the parking lot walking into this social enterprise, conscious, visionary type charity event. And we bumped into each other in the parking lot. She looked at me, I looked at her. I was suited and booted, as the UK friends say. She was suited and booted. And I got to admit, maybe she'll chuckle, maybe she'll, not admit it, because we both were like, this son of a, we both were triggering, so to speak, each other. And we're like, this, so-and-so and this so-and-so. Now, I bring that up because that's what we're going to hear here today. We're going to talk from a more raw, insightful place so you can get access to this. Fast forward to last year, I started on LinkedIn. I was inspired to start this meditation group where everybody was weirded out and said, doesn't this belong on Facebook, Haas? Why are you doing this on LinkedIn? I said, well, I got the insight on my journey now that I'm in my calling to bring soul to business leaders. And Stephani and I reconnected. We maybe had no conversations. Do you remember if we even had? Not really, right? Up until gratitude gatherings, you never talked to me, right? Did we? I don't even recall a conversation.
Comments and things.
Yeah, I meant in personally, we never really shared a conversation. It was all LinkedIn, social media. Definitely, you supported me and then started to lean in. So as fate would have it, we met through these meditation circles. And Stephani was at a place in her journey where she literally was not only doing the inner work, she in fact has co-founded a very brand on this topic, which we may or may not get into today. So without further ado, because I can go on and on to the levels and ways, because it's a multi-dimensional existence we have of the beauty and the respect I have for who Stephani is and what she's doing. So without further ado, Ms. Stephani Lucas, founder of Heart-Centered Planning.
Thank you.
In the
Thanks
financial services industry. I forgot to say that, by the way. Financial services. We're going to hear all about heart and finance, which I'm going to ask away a lot. So without further ado, how are you?
I am great. Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here. Yeah.
So talk to us, Steph. You know, as usual, I like to jump right in. It's a deep dive into the heart of leadership.
Yeah.
So let's get raw. Tell people the before and after, your transformational journey. How did it shape you? And it's very inspired, and we go with the flow, as you know, and the audience who's joining us may or may not know that. So we kind of start the topic and we flow. So talk to us about all that, whatever's coming up, and we'll start from there. Flow with us. Yeah.
Yeah. So I am in the insurance and financial space and have been for about 21 years. And in that space, it is very male dominated, very ego driven, and it doesn't really hold space for the feminine. It, you know, and I worked alongside some of the best in the industry, and I tried to compete with them to be one of the boys. You know, I grew up in a household with 8 brothers, and I thought, well, you know, they operate in this way, I'm gonna operate in this way. And so being in that industry, it is very easy to become, well, alcohol flows a lot in that industry, you know, a lot of social events, wining and dining people to do business with you. And so not only was I trying to keep up with the boys and be one of the boys, I really suppressed my feminine. And I also became an addict. And I, you know, used alcohol mostly as a way to fit in, but also a way to kind of suppress who I was, because I needed to perform at a certain level. I needed to be this, you know, driver and constantly, you know, doing. And it definitely became an issue. In 2012, around the time that you and I actually met, was when I started having this like downward spiral with it. And I knew I needed to get it together.
Hold on. Literally, again, I didn't know this about you. This is all live for me and new as far as learning about you. That mirrors what I would call my downward spiral, which I got my DUI, I think 2014, which was very kismet. So that's interesting. Keep going. It's blowing my mind.
Yeah. So I got mine in 2010.
Oh, you beat me to it. High five.
Yeah. In fact, I got it just a couple months after I moved to California with the company I was working with.
Oh, wow.
And I remember how much shame was around it too. Like, I didn't tell any of my family. I mean, I was on house arrest. It was terrible. And it happened right before I started my company. So I started my company in May of 2010, and I got my DUI, I want to say in February. So I was going through the process of, you know, dealing with having this DUI and building my business. And it was so difficult. And I was working 18 hours a day. And it was one of these things where, like, you know, I had so many people that were moving over to do business with me because of the relationships I had built. And so I'm so grateful for that. And nobody realized what was happening with me, like personally, you know. I put on my, you know, my suit every day, even in my home office. And I put on this like brave face and conducted my business and did the things that I needed to do. And my life was falling apart. I was making more money than I had ever made before. but I was not doing well emotionally. I wasn't doing well physically. Like I was overweight. I was not taking care of myself. I definitely had a lot of things happening that were not good. But there were so many things that were good. And so I just thought, oh, you know what? I'll get through it. I'll push through it just like I do everything else. And it's all going to be fine. And everything's gonna be great.
Let's pause real quick. There's a lot of notes I'm taking. This one point real quick, because I've worked in your financial industry before. And that was one of my case studies. And that's how I can't name it because of NDAs. A person I put you in touch with from LA had worked. So you may know that by now. And that I'm thinking of this one founder in this RIA who was a real prototypical of, I was told to watch Billions around this time, which I think your industry knows a lot about. And this guy was like Axelrod. If I were to say this partner, he was the trouble partner, and they brought me in because they're like, he's the bane of our existence, etc. My point, and beautiful soul. Here's my point. He was not overweight, Stephani. He was in dis-ease, which we can talk about later about wellness and biophysical healing, which may come in. So what about the people that are listening? Like, Steph, I feel good and I look good. What would you say to them? Because they may be like, I don't have obesity, so they may not have the signs of the red flags per se. So what would you say to them now to pause on that? Unpack that real quick, please.
I mean, there are a lot of things that can come up, right? Like you can be thin and look great, but have anxiety.
He had that. Keep going. We'll go through your checklist. What else? Keep going.
You can look and think you're doing great, and you don't sleep well. You have headaches often.
He had migraines. Yep. What else? Keep going.
Issues with your jaw, right? Like clenching your teeth.
He was in tension. He wouldn't admit it. We couldn't go down that far of the rabbit hole. He probably needed a few acupressure sessions and stuff. Keep going. Okay. Tension in the body, clenching, definitely. He lost all of his hair like I started to with adrenal fatigue. So we can talk about adrenal fatigue and how that contributes to testosterone loss. I'll add that. What else?
Well, and for the ladies, your menstrual cycles are off.
I don't have a yoni, so good. That's good that you mentioned that. Okay, what else?
Issues.
So there are non-physical signs in your colleagues that you've seen. Have you met anybody that you're like dude or dudette?
Oh yeah. Well, now I feel energy, right?
We'll talk about that real quick. I know we're jumping around. That's okay. Let's keep flowing. What do you mean by that? I know we're going to the after. Let's plug this in. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm very empathic.
Okay.
And so I feel people. Like if you're sad, if you're overwhelmed, if you're just at it, any kind of energy.
You feel energy, extrasensory.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that.
And I really have to protect myself because I can absorb people's stuff like a lot. It can make me nauseous. It can give me headaches. It can cause anxiety. So
are there other Stephanis in your industry and other male Stephanis? Do you feel there's a lot of empaths or people that may be listening that are like, what is that? And I may be it and don't know it. How can you tell that you are that? How can you tell you can do heart-centered planning? This is another way of saying this. How can you tell if they're listening right now and this is new vernacular? Let's say they're from your audience listening to the show. How can they tell like that they're an empath or that they have these extrasensory, let's say, skills, so to speak?
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest part of how I interpreted that I had this is when somebody is in distress or in pain, I literally take that on.
You feel the stress of another. You feel
I want to fix it, right? So, and I think a lot of people in this industry are here because they want to solve problems for people. So a lot of empathic people are attracted to this industry because they want to help. They truly desire to help people. What I think happens a lot of times is the wrong people get a hold of them and teach them the wrong way of doing this kind of business. And, and that's how we get, people that are doing this for the money because they have their sales goals they have to meet. They've got their quotas, or they tend to want to sell a product because it's something they have to push, right? So it's not because they want to be doing it, they're just told that they have to.
Well, that's beautiful. And it parallels another soul sister I'll be on later, and the sequence will show these. Carrie is going to talk about this from a legal perspective. So it's not to say it's not about making money. As a disclaimer here, the lawyer in me kicking in, because my theory is on the legal industry, it's similar, that there's a subset of the populace that gravitates to it because of this empathic helper healer type vibe. And then so we're disclaiming there's nothing wrong with making money. I've said this as a legal trainer to legal professionals and mediators. It's the holistic themes that we're presenting here today and we're starting diving into. It's not about it's about a holistic, it's including more soul, more whatever you want to call it, emotion, heart. In her instance, it's heart-centered. So back to you, you're at this 2010. So you started your business and shit is falling apart. We'll use the S-bomb, okay?
Yeah, all of it's falling apart, but yet I'm building something, right? I'm living in Del Mar, California, on the west side of the
You're in Del Mar?
Right?
You mother son of a effort. Really? Lucky
right? I
Knock
lived there for 3 years.
Knock on wood.
Yeah. And after a while, I just couldn't.
That's heaven on earth. You couldn't handle heaven on earth? Are you kidding me right now? You were that sick.
You know what, though? There are a lot of Dalmatians, and not that there's anything wrong with Martians and aliens, like nothing wrong with them, right?
A little pocket of spirituality.
Yeah. It's just, there's the just. So yeah, I wanted to be in a space that was a little bit more spiritual. So yeah.
So when you're living there, real quick, so did you have this undertone that you kind of knew? Because of my sibling maybe and my own essence, I was, even before I had my sabbatical and went full, let's call it woo or fully integrated all of this and healed fully my own inner judgment around it to be in my calling. Did you know, okay, I'm kind of spiritual, we'll call it that to oversimplify it? Or was this something like you kind of grappled with? Because I kind of knew it was more like hid it in a closet, sort of.
Yeah. So when I was growing up, I was sort of forced to go to these different churches. And so religion was really pushed on me. And so I rejected it, right? And that was a huge part too when I had to go to my DUI classes, the AA, like 12 steps and talking about God and all the things, and I was just like, I can't connect with that. So my higher power was my cat. So I was like, if I got to be here, I have to figure out how to do this. Right.
Yeah. Right.
And it was, several years later, when I met now a very good friend of mine, Cherie, who's a shaman, she was the one who really helped guide me into finding what spirituality could be for me, where it felt comfortable and it felt like, oh yeah, I am connected to this and this. And now for me, it's like universe, God, spirit, it's all the same. And I understand why I rejected the organized religion, why I felt like it wasn't something for me.
Well, there's a lot of conditioning around that, and we will dive into that because that's some of the notes to keep your flow going. Yeah, and there's a lot of throwing out the baby with the bathwater, so that's definitely resonant. Yeah, and it can be a challenge. So for those listening, there is science. If you're new to the show, you can go to the other episodes. What, in a way, Stephani is alluding to is Dr. David Hawkins talks about levels of consciousness, and that's frequency. Right? It's all energy. If you want to learn more about this, check that out. And so as Stephani evolves, and you'll hear as her evolution, she unpacks it, you expand, you get more awareness of this. Couple of questions so I don't lose them. When you say hold space for the feminine, for my audience, your audience, whoever else is listening, what the heck does that mean? I know what that means. You know what that means. What the heck does hold space, first of all, mean? And what is this feminine you speak of? How can we explain that archetype to the audience?
Yeah. So it's an energetic, right? And we all have it. And there is a creativity. I mean, the feminine is the creative. So
it's an archetype of the creative force.
Yeah. And whether you're male or female, we all have it. And, a lot of times, for instance, I would have ideas, all kinds of ideas that I would bring to my bosses, and they would poo-poo it. But then they would take it to our boss, right? And then they'd be like, oh my God, that's such a great idea. So it would be let's just squash Stephani's creativity and her feminine. And so I ended up just kind of pushing it aside myself, because I was like, they don't value it. They're taking credit for it. So why even have it? So I'm just gonna stay over here and push sales and like develop these relationships that can like bring in business and premium and, you know, so.
It's interesting because I talk about this, I think it was with Scott, who you've met now, Yogi Banker. It's a lot of the way for the audience to understand this is right is our creative center, right hemisphere of the brain, right? And then the left is the thinking technical. So another way, if this is too off-putting for you, if it makes it more palatable, indulge us with this, that we're talking about industries like law, where I come from, here, financial services, insurance services, they tend to be, and here I get blurry, and this camera does that occasionally. So you literally want to have left and right hemisphere, or have feminine and masculine, is essentially what I'm hearing from you, Steph, as you and I know. So more importantly, well, equally as important as what is the feminine, what is hold space? Because we hear that a lot. And those that are new to spirituality, you know, meditation, mindfulness, they say you need to hold space. Hold space. I grappled with that personally until I figured it out a couple of years ago. I go, oh, it means this. So what does it mean to you? How would you define it? What does hold space mean?
Yeah, for me, it's more or less having the ability to express, right? To have if it's physically somebody being there and like allowing you to like let yourself flow, right? And not in judgment and not in, and maybe I don't even need you to talk to me about it. Just let me just, you know, vomit whatever I need out. Sometimes it is actually vomiting, but
purging. There's an episode, Will, and then I think another soul brother may be on later. We'll talk. He's passion and calling is plant medicine, art, and that we'll see if we can get him on. So with this, it's interesting, right? Because when you're talking about holding space, it reminds me of your heart-centered planning series that you had me on, the inaugural one, the grounding. Because I think it correlates. If people want to check that out, they can check out her heart-centered planning series. Am I saying it right? Yeah, and I know you're going to plug it at some point. You can plug it too. On her, it's right there, and it's on YouTube as well. So all you got to do is literally search in your little box, and then you can go to her YouTube channel. Ta-da! And then you can find my mug there and be like, wait, am I still on this guy's channel? No. I'm on one of her initial episodes. Because when we talked about grounding, that's what I'm going back to now, and I'm reminded of. Because maybe that'll make it easier for the audience. It's, you know, for me, when I grappled with this esoterica, so to speak, it was, what does this mean? And so if you want to watch that grounding episode, and really quickly, it's this notion of bringing more, it sounds like more presence as well as another corollary, synonymous way. Yeah, because like what you said at the end, which was you have to be present, it sounds like, with all of it, even the purging, the releases. Yeah. Okay. Real quick, before we continue on your transformation, this is the other thing I wrote down, I want to talk about. So, you know, a lot of what the first season and in my work, and I know in the inner work you've done, we talk about taking off masks or conditioning. It sounds like you fit that mold, like all of us, you know, on this leadership journey, where we're essentially, here's our upbringing, here's our conditioning, here's who we think we are. They're all identity. And it seems like you basically were like, I'm more than this. I feel it. I sense it. And then you said it, I fit in by suppressing who I was, is kind of how I hear it. So I have a question, and I know you're still unpacking, and this goes into what you're doing.
Sure.
Why weren't you, now go back there, why weren't you sharing more of yourself? So because some of the audience is like, I may lose my job, all that. Tell us about your experience of, did you ever want to not fit in? Did you ever think about rebelling? And if so, what was that like?
Yeah. So
let's not say rebelling. Erase that. Sorry. Not rebelling. To actually express the fullness of who you are. There you go. Without being afraid. That's what I mean.
Yeah. So I suppressed it because of fear. Right.
Mm-hmm.
There was so much fear around. If they really knew who I was, if they could really see me, they'd be like, get this dirty hippie out of our industry. Right. Like, I'm a new age hippie and I'm going to claim that, you know, and it doesn't mean the same as it used to. So you don't have to be broke to be a hippie. Like,
well, there's societal conditioning or programs or stigmas, shall we say, around that.
So I didn't want to lose my job. I didn't want to lose my clients. Right. And the thing is a lot of the people in this industry, they definitely use religion as a way to gain business. Whether they are super like great, you know, God-fearing Christians.
Whether they're aligned or not, it's a sales pitch. I get it. Okay.
Yeah.
Lawyers do it too. I mean, it's God bless you. You're clever on your marketing.
Yeah.
It's not authentic. It's not heart-centered. And you may not resonate with us. And that may be the old way of doing things, which is falling apart, everybody.
Yes.
Intent.
Yes.
Yeah. Keep going. You're flowing. I love it.
I don't remember where I was going with
I interrupted you. My bad.
Good.
Okay, hold on. I'll bring you back.
Get back to that question.
Yeah. It's the way the religion, and then the marketing. Unfortunately, you were saying some people market. So then you flow from there. Yeah, that's where you were.
Yeah. So that's a way that people attract people to do business. And so I didn't want to, voice that I don't really believe what you believe. Not that there's anything wrong with what you believe, but like, I'm not there and I'm not going to connect with you on this level. And so had you known that, you probably wouldn't have done your business with me. But I didn't speak who I was. I didn't share what was actually happening. And
would you back then, not now, because we both know, wow, there are other people like us. Were you also afraid that you were alone or nobody else is like I'm a weirdo and nobody else is like this? Yeah,
for sure. In fact, until recently, I hadn't found people like me in this industry. So when I really started sharing more of this heart-centered planning series and the way that I would search on LinkedIn to try to connect with people, the keywords that I was using and the messages that I was sending, because I figured these messages are not going to land with the people that aren't, like-minded or like-souled, right? And so I got very intentional about the way that I was communicating so that the people that are kind of like in hiding, right? But they're starting to come out. They are starting to like put it on their websites. They are starting to create courses and like things around it. And so I'm starting to find them. And I know that there's more and more of them. And especially as women become more comfortable in the industry, as they gain more respect and notoriety in the industry, and they're in these higher levels of upper management and running companies and doing these things, like it's starting to shift.
I think I don't know if it was Scott. Maybe it was, funny enough, Yogi Scott, Yogi Banker, who and was also on her show. So check that out. And
he was on my show last week.
I know. It was very synchronistic timing. There is something to be said about that, because when we spoke about it is, that fear, that stigmatization, and that self-judgment is very real. And you'd be surprised at how prevalent it is. Real quick, because we explain what holding space for the feminine and as it relates to creativity and accessing that, being more holistic. And then this notion of being your authentic self. And I know you're going to unpack more and more, kind of going with the flow. How can that make whoever's listening a better professional? So I'm the cynic in the room. I'll play that devil's advocate, right? What's the ROI in holding space for the feminine within myself if I'm listening and I'm a dude?
Gosh, if you can allow yourself to be creative and flow more like easily, it takes so much more stress off of you, right? Like there's an energy that is lifted when you are able to step into being wholly you, right?
So would you liken that to Bruce Lee quote, "Be water," or "Be like water"? Would you liken that to that fluidity that Bruce Lee is espousing metaphysically? It's more of that not being edgy and being softer, more to speak, more or less. Interesting. And then what about this other notion of how can being, and I know it's maybe obvious to some that are entrepreneurs like yourself and me, how can being your authentic self make them more money when they face that edge of pushing, right? Because the tipping point is what we're talking about, is once you reach like Malcolm Gladwell, which we allude to in that other episode, tipping point, and it has to happen. It feels like the tipping point's happening for you, or you're congregating and then it's gelling more. Well, what if they're in a place where they don't feel like there's other people like them? How can we share with them, how is the ROI better if they're more authentic, if they're not suppressing, if they're not trying to fit in?
That's an interesting question.
I know I popped those curveballs. So, in the audience, it's no hold barred. And it's like WrestleMania with Haas.
I'm going to be like completely transparent too, because I know you appreciate that.
This is what the purpose of the show is. It's raw. Yeah, no BS.
I will tell you for sure, when I decided that this is the direction I was going to go in, I got rid of a lot of people that I was doing business with. It definitely impacted my bottom line negatively. But what it did is it impacted me positively in so many ways.
What ways?
When I would see somebody's name pop up on my phone, they're calling me for help with a case, but I would get like the sickness in the pit of my stomach. I would be like, oh, I don't want to take that call. And I decline that call. And then I would have to like collect myself and pull myself together and like be like, okay, you could do this, call them back, get this call out of the way and do whatever it is that they need so they can do the business so you can make the money.
Sounds grueling. Yeah.
It was terrible. I mean, and in this industry too, there are unfortunately a lot of men that are gross. And it's true. It's so true.
On behalf of men out there, we can be occasionally gross. Our locker room talk is obscene. I will confess, yes.
Well, and the thing is too, is like I constantly got sexually harassed. And even when you shot them down and it was very clear you were not even remotely interested, they did it over and over. And it was just like, why?
Because it's the culture. It's
respect me enough to not do that. And especially the ones that have like daughters or who are married. And I'm just like, really like, so yeah, it was difficult to, when you are treated that way, to be 100% authentically you, right? Like, I want to cover myself up. I don't want to be seen. I don't want to, so maybe that was why I was like unhealthy and overweight.
So it sounds like you got rid of the toxicity around you to get rid of the toxicity within you. And in a way, getting rid of the toxicity within you got rid of the toxicity outside of you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Was it worth it now? Oh, keep going.
100%. Like I wouldn't change my decisions for the world. And of course, I mean, I'm in this industry, so clearly, like, I know how to plan. I know how to manage money. I know how to get what I need done. And so it was like, it would set us back a little bit for a minute, but eventually I got back to where I was and more. And so it's literally when I decided to do my own inner work and my energy reflected what I wanted in my outer world, right? Like, so everything changed because I changed, right?
I'm reminded of the saying my yogi used to say, you got to pull a bow back to fire the arrow. You got to pull the bow back. There's always one step back for that 2 steps forward because you got to get a running start, more or less, energetically speaking. So I love that. I speak to that too. I've written articles about it, and I oftentimes tell people, and a lot of people from my past, were upset by it, and it was a conscious choice I had to make, and I did it as loving as I knew how then, and still do. It is a difficult one for those listening, and Stephanie is going to continue to unpack this, and you're going to hear, because this work is not for the faint of heart. So that's where, this touchy feely, everybody thinks, oh, that if it were so easy, why aren't more people doing it? No. It takes guts, and glory comes with that grittiness. So let's keep going, because that talks about space and capacity. So you're about at the point where I sense you're going to start talking about the inner work synchronistically enough, because I sense things are falling apart goes into that. Okay, so keep going. Transformation, inner work. Where did that take you? You're sick, you're building, you're crushing it, right? Alpha, we're crushing it, bro. Billions, we're crushing it, bro. We made so much returns, so many dividends, blah, blah, blah. And then you're like falling apart with it.
I was falling apart. I was on antidepressants. I had to take like anxiety medication. I, was just really in a place where I didn't know how to deal with what was happening to me inside. But I knew there was something wrong, right? And when I finally decided, well, 2012, my alcoholism got worse than it had ever been, right? So I got the DUI and I was like, oh, I got this, you know, I can handle it, like no big deal. Got through all the things, you know, like tens of thousands of dollars to like deal with this, right? Oh my God, it was ridiculous. And I just could not anymore handle being that person. It was like a constant cycle.
What was your breaking point? Sorry to interrupt. What was your breaking? Do you remember the moment where you were like, this has got to change? Like, do you remember that seminal moment?
I remember that I hated myself.
Got it. Okay.
I felt like I was using myself, and every time, like, you know, I gave myself to somebody, I would like lose a piece of me, and I'm like, why don't they like me? Well, I don't even like myself. Why would they like me? You know, like, and I felt
the same.
Yeah, I felt alone. But yet I had all these friends, right? But as soon as I stopped drinking and stopped paying for their drinks, like I had no friends.
Again, toxicity, like we said, beautifully illustrated.
Yeah. So I was the life of the party, you know, and everybody wanted to hang out. And then when I stopped, it was like,
maybe that's why we connected. High five.
Yeah.
We're both like, oh, you too.
Yeah.
Shots for the round for everybody. Round for everybody.
Yeah. So
you're there. Yeah. So you're there, and talk to me. So what happened next? So you're having these feelings and the despicability. So if you're listening, it's real. I hear it with clients. I had it. This is the low of the low we feel that we try to convince ourselves. Like Tony Robbins and Unleash the Power Within, for instance, to give a flavor, you know, there's this notion of psychology where you want to shoot for not good because you're going to always, you know, what is it, that saying, shoot for the stars, get the moon? Your mind says, I'm good. And we get habituated to thinking this is the best we can do. And as Tony teaches, you can be outstanding. You can raise the bar, or Gay Hendricks, the big leap, you know, upper limit. You can stretch yourself, which is really what you're here to talk about, is how can you hold more space for yourself? So you're having this, it's real for those listening. It's not only in women. If you're being a misogynist right now, like I used to be slightly, not knowing, like, oh, you're being emotional like a woman. No, I had it. And if you're going to say I'm weak sauce, then you come find me and we will wrestle. And so talk to us about that. So then where did that take you? Where did the transformational journey take you down that road?
So I remember in February of 2013 is when I finally was like, I can't do this anymore. I am done, and I am going to get sober. And when I started that process, I reached out to my insurance company and was like, hey, like I need some help. And they were like, okay, cool. We can send you to this like facility, right? But we're not going to cover a whole lot of it.
I had a feeling this was coming.
And then also, you can't work while you're there. So, you know, like the $35,000 that they want to charge me to, you know, put me in this facility. I think it was like a 3-month program or something. Wow. And I was like, okay, so I can't work to make the money to pay for it, and the insurance won't pay for it. And here I am in the insurance industry, right? And I'm just like, are you kidding me? Like, okay. And then I found this this program that was they were testing marijuana and like CBD treatments.
Really? 2015?
Oh, yeah. Wow. Yeah. It was through Scripps, actually.
At UCSD, I knew the physician. I trained under the doctors that were doing that research. It's like Half-Baked style, the movie, that was what they were doing it.
So I was like, oh, this sounds perfect for me. Like I could totally do this, right? And then they were like, well, you have to have been off of alcohol for at least 6 months to do this. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not. So, okay, cool. So nobody wants to help. Like there's nothing that you can, you know, do and continue running your business to be able to pay for your program, you know. And so I just cold turkey, like stopped doing it. I stopped, you know, going out. I just like locked myself into my house and like just kept myself sober.
Now let's pause for a second, because alcohol is a real, you know, thing that's interesting, because I would say my DUI was not related to alcohol, it was related to negligence and recklessness, because it was not per se that substance, because I didn't really drink that much. Yes, I drank.
Yeah.
I know people listening, oh, he's in denial. No. I had literally another issue going on that this was masking that. Now, for the people listening, because in that case study, for instance, right, and I found myself in this realm that's not full on like hardcore. It's in this middle, which we oftentimes, because of happy hour culture, and you alluded to it, in social atmospheres, social drinking. What would you say about the people that go home and have to have a drink every night? Where, because you sound like you were me. You were partying hard, only I was partying with everything, and it was like wild everything. It wasn't,
I was partying with all the things.
Mm-hmm.
But
so what would you say about the people? What would you say about the people like, oh, I need one puff, I need one drink when I go home? How do they grapple with this in terms of the spectrum? I know you're not a professional in this realm.
Yeah.
From your own personal experience, what would you say to the people that they think they're happy and they're okay? This is the real question. Let me read.
If they can have one, great for them. I'm not that person, so I don't know that experience, right? I'm like the all or nothing person, right?
So how do they? Okay, beautiful. That's what I meant. Yeah. How can they tell they're an all or nothing? How can they tell that it's not an issue? Like, did you ever put it aside? Did you ever try to put alcohol and drugs aside and go and not be able to?
Yeah.
So was that a symptom? Like, because I know I had trouble earlier in my life with cannabis, putting it aside. And then once I learned to separate, I always say the issue is not the issue. It's your relationship to the issue that's the issue, right?
Yeah.
And so would you say that that's a symptom? And then how many people in your industry drink? Like, because in lawyers, it's everybody. Everybody. And is that like the go-to event to throw is let's throw a happy hour event?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
How has it been?
All of like the industry like training events or like trips that you go on to like, learn about new products and things. Like that's all they're doing,
Why wouldn't they do? And I know this is part of what you're bringing to the industry. I know we're again popping around and coming through, so I'll offer it now if that's okay. Is I know this is where you're leaning with yoga and all that. Have you ever seen before you started to do it? And I know Scott's doing it in the UK. Why do you think, from your perspective, because I actually tried to do this in the legal industry and it worked a little bit in San Diego and Southern California Mediation Association, bringing more of that. Why do you think people, is there anybody out there going, hey, instead of a happy hour, let's do, I don't know, beach meditation, or it doesn't even have to be woo-woo. Let's go for a hike, or is that ever offered in that place?
No. What I believe, being an American.
Yeah.
Right. This is, and if you need medication for things, there are people that need this, right? Yeah. But I believe that our society has cultivated a way of being that is like, let's put a Band-Aid on it. Why would I go sit and do yoga or meditate for an hour to relieve my stress when I could like take a shot in like 2 seconds to relieve my stress?
Perfect. Keep going.
Right. So it's really one of those things that's an easier route, that hands down easier. And a lot of what I was doing was pushing all of my issues down. That's why I was an addict, right? All the stress, all of the shame, the hate, the things that have built up over time because of things that have happened in my childhood, things that have happened even in, my parents' lives because of how they were brought up, how it impacted the way that I was raised, like generational issues.
Oh yeah, it's real. We touch upon it a little bit with Cordelia. I mentioned kind of like my inner child and the mother stuff, and she mentions it and the archetypes. So if you're interested in that, upbringing, conditioning, family dynamics. We touch upon that in the first episode with Cordelia. And so, you're speaking, very resonant stuff that needs to be said. And as you know, I'm in a similar vein. So, okay. So I keep interrupting you. Sorry about that. We're flowing, we're riffing. So I keep going. So you're here and then I bring you here. So this notion of the falling apart, how did you start to get things back in harmony, health, all that? And the branding, how did that, so boom, keep going.
So there was a lot more falling apart, right?
Keep going. Beautiful.
So after I got sober, just a few months, I lost my grandfather. And that was like the first time that I had ever really experienced a true like loss of somebody that I loved.
Wait, right? What year was this?
And this was in 2013.
This is exactly my story, my experience. Wow, beautiful.
Yeah, and
my brother was the first for me. Wow.
Yeah. So, and like, talk about being like unraveling, right? And wanting to so badly just go back to alcohol, like take that pain away, like let me just like be numb, right? And then I realized, like, he was, 30 some year Marine, but the kindest, most gentle, loving person that you had ever met, right? And the most beautiful man. And he showed me that, like, there's so much strength in pain, right? And so I really could not let him down. I could not go and drink because I'm going through this. It was like, I have to push through and I have to be strong and I have to do this. And then a few months later, I find out my cat has cancer. And I was just like, oh my God, like, is there anything else? Like, if I didn't believe in God, like, what the hell are you doing to me? Like, why are you doing this?
Why me, God? Why?
Yeah. And my cat was like my everything. And
he was your higher power in AA. Literally, he was your higher power.
Yeah, that was my higher power. And I'm like, she's gotten me through this. This is how I have had the strength, because I had her, this tiny little being that is in my house. Like, she would come and curl up next to me and I would feel her energy, like, taking pain from me. Like, she literally was healing me. And then I'm like, oh my God, that pain that she took from me caused her cancer. Like, so now I'm thinking, like, I made her fucking have cancer. And pardon my language.
I blame myself. I blame myself for my brother's demise too. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, the downward spiral, and the mind is a fickle beast.
It is.
It can make you the whipping. It can make you the whipping boy and girl. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, yeah. So I go through this with her for probably like 6 months, and she I had her going through chemo and all the things, and I did everything I possibly could to save her. And we even had her in a program at like Texas A&M where they were studying what they were doing with her so it could help with like human trials, which was really cool. I'm like, at least like there's something you're helping with, like, going through this. And finally it got to the point where I couldn't do it any longer. I couldn't keep her here. And then it was another time where I'm like, oh my God, now I'm losing like this tiny precious thing that has like helped keep me from like unraveling and losing it. And it was another moment where like I was tested and I could have easily gone to alcohol. And then I realized, like, she was so stoic through all of this, and going, this tiny creature having all of these chemicals and having to deal with having like this, tube in her throat, and I had to feed her through the tube and give her medication through the tube. And like, it was really insane to watch something like that and see the strength that she had. And so her strength and her being so stoic through this whole process gave me the strength to not go back. And I was like, for her, I am not going to go back, And obviously there were other people in my life helping me stay strong. Like my sister, when I would like lose it, I would be sitting at the table. I could hardly even do my job, I couldn't run my business hardly. I don't know how I stayed afloat, really, to be honest. Like, it was God. It was like,
well, higher power, and
it was
your resilience and your resilience. Right?
Yep.
We go back to, it speaks to the processing of all this. Yeah.
Yep.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So it was like, it was when I stopped drinking, it was like the, when you take the top off the genie's bottle, and like everything comes out. Right?
Oh, it's Pandora's box.
Yeah. Okay. We'll go with that then.
Yeah.
So it's like everything comes out.
Well, because the genie could imply you get everything you wanted. That's why I was like Pandora's box. Yeah.
Well, you do get everything you want eventually.
Ah, touche. Ooh.
You really do.
Well, let's pause and explain that for the audience. Yeah. So they may go like, wait, what? She wanted all this shit? What do you mean by that, real quick? What do you mean you wanted?
I mean, I didn't want it when it was coming to me, but what I went through and at the other side of it was definitely what I wanted.
Right. So could one say that there's a super consciousness or a higher power that you're connected to? So what you said earlier, real quick, while you're flowing, I was tested, and it's fascinating because I used to think that I had to ace the test and I wasn't holding space and making it through. What I'm hearing you started to do is started to hold space and push through. So it's not that you get the test. We test ourselves is what I hear you saying by I wanted this, because I think it's this trippy experiment that we all wrote this at a soul level. And so it's kind of like I brought this so I would grow and expand. And that sounds like what you're saying in a way, in a multidimensional sense. So keep going. So this is grueling, it sounds like. I mean, I was crying.
It was so terrible. I mean, a day didn't go by that I wasn't crying, and like I was sick, and I didn't know how to live. I didn't know how to live a life of sobriety. Like it was like my whole entire like personality and everything was like tied up in this this substance, this process, the life that was, right?
Did that tie to your identity as a professional too? Would you say it's synonymous? Because it's type A. That's kind of how I was. 0 to 60, right? Lawyers are work hard, party hard motto. Yeah.
Yep. And then I needed to drink until I passed out because I couldn't sleep without that, right? And it was just like a gross like cycle, you know, constant. And when that, like I said, the genie or whatever you want to call it, like when you uncorked that, once I stopped drinking, like every emotion, every bit of shame, every fear, everything that was being pushed down because of the use of drugs and alcohol all came out. It was like a floodgate had opened and everything just like hit me. And it was just, it was terrible. It was like, my body was detoxing and it was painful. And it took me almost 2 years of sobriety before I actually felt comfortable like in my own skin, you know, like
there's a reason. I mean, from a purely, you know, expertise perspective, you know, and I tell this to people, the longer it's system, our body is a system, as you and I know, and garbage into a system, as any programmer will tell you in IT, garbage into a system, garbage out. The longer we suppress, right? You talked earlier about, you know, fitting in by suppressing who I was. If you suppress that, the more you build layers, right? These masks you alluded to briefly earlier. And then, that's why I tell people, so the longer you wait, the worse the healing is going to be, the processing is going to be, because the more shit you're going to have to get out of your system. And I don't think you even noticed, I may have told you once, because, you know, you and I have been so close in the work we've done, that I actually had Herxheimer reaction. I was telling a client today, Herxheimer is what Navy SEALs get, for those listening, when they go through their BUDS training in this 1 week where they're put through hell. I first got it when my eldest physician, celebrity brother, put me through a detox. That was in my chest. When I started to deeply detox, I don't think I've told you this, I got Herxheimer in my head. It's unheard of. So I had Herxheimer, if you're eating, please stop eating, pus and stuff coming out of my head, out of my scalp, y'all. So if you want to keep going with your lifestyle, please, by all means, you're going to make me a very rich man. I don't want to be a rich man. I want to be a fulfilled man, that everybody doesn't need this work. So I could, you know, you and I can go on and on, because this is a testament. This is one of the reasons we're doing this show, is to show people, look, not only is there another side, which you're getting to, it also makes you more money, which we're going to, you know, unpack as well, because it's more fulfilling and more abundant in the long haul, like you're going to get to. So, okay. So shit's getting released is the theme of where we're at.
Yes.
Colloquially speaking.
Yeah. And so now at this point, a friend of mine introduced me to meditation.
Ooh.
And so meditation became
2015. Where are we in your timeline now? 2015?
Yeah, I was around, it was probably around like 2014, 2015 ish. Because no, it was probably more like closer to mid 2014. Yeah. Okay. Because that was like,
because practice, DUI, breakdowns were like 2014, 2015. You start to then come up into mindfulness and meditation.
Yeah. Because it was like this whole part of me was like still super disconnected, right? And I didn't know like what to do. I knew that I didn't use medications. I actually had gotten off of the antidepressants. I got rid of the anti-anxiety. I got rid of everything. I I did smoke weed.
Cannabis, please, cannabis. We're going to talk about this when we get to plant medicines later in another episode. Plant medicines are sacred tools from indigenous traditions that come from the earth that we revere. Weed is a very disgusting name. It's like saying, you know, this B word to a woman or this A word to a dude, because we're defiling the sacredness that this plant has been found. One sec, Steph, has been found in the Chinese book of herbology from 7,000 years ago. One of the primary plants used. Vedic Indian healing. You find it in Persian mysticism, the hashishis, the Assassin's Creed. If you play video games, well, guess what? Assassin comes from, they used to smoke cannabis, get into altered states, and then get stealth ninja mode. So anyways, you were smoking cannabis, you were saying. Yes, I'm following.
Yeah, like cannabis, CBD, you know, like mixed.
Can you say I'm passionate? I'm about the feminine, you know? Don't you call her that. Don't you call her that. I love you. I'm teasing you.
So yeah, you know, and so that was kind of like the one thing that I was using to kind of try to cope with everything that was happening, you know.
Well, the CBD does medicinal, and you know this for the audience's sake, that you were like, what the heck is CBD? And you're in a cave somewhere, because now CBD is everywhere and it's not illegal because it's not psychoactive. CBD does do wonders. Stem cell, it's like stem cell properties. CBN is more stem cells, to be precise, for those in the plant industry. And then nervous system is what she's going to be alluding to soon, ladies and gentlemen. So there you go. Review.
That and inflammation within your system.
Oh yeah, I forgot that. Yes, thank you. Yes.
Especially like not eating right, and you know,
autoimmune. Didn't you have autoimmune issues?
Oh yeah. But that came up like later.
So keep going. Yeah, keep unpacking.
Yeah, that was part of the purge. You know,
garbage out. The garbage out.
Because everything gets worse before it gets better. And
pull the bow back before you shoot it.
Yep. So so my friend introduced me to meditation. And then I started traveling a lot, like all over the world, because I wanted to experience more than what my upbringing offered to me. And I wanted to be able to understand the world in a different way. I wanted to immerse myself in different cultures and, like, you know, be able to be even more grateful for what I have, right? Because we take for granted so much what we have in this country. And when you leave this place that we've created, there's a different world out there. And so many people don't get it. Like, you see it on TV, it's completely different when you experience it, when you're in it, you know? And so I started doing that, and in a lot of these places experiencing healing from, you know, different modalities, and I was very much open to, like, whatever. I'm like,
so you're now talking indigenous traditions, alternative practices, integrative, East meets West, and many of you have been following the show. It's, you know, we talk a lot about this here.
And, you know, just finding different ways to nourish my body, my mind, and my soul without having to do what we do here. And that, you know, that's medicate it, suppress it, you know, ignore it. We'll fix it with another medication. And I didn't want to do that. I just did not want to live that way.
It sounds like you can't really grow financially if you starve yourself emotionally, mentally, and biophysically.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I talk about that a lot. It's like, you need to be your ideal client. And how do you become that? Right?
What do you mean?
So for me, in my experience, the only way that I can attract the people that I want to be working with is if I do what I preach, right? So practice what you preach.
Alignment.
Alignment. And in this industry, so many times I find people that their finances are all out of whack, but they're telling people what to do with their money. You know, like the first job I ever had in this industry was even before the 21 years that I talk about being in it. I was a personal assistant to a guy that was with Merrill Lynch, and his finances were so out of whack. And he was in charge of taking care of his mother's estate as well. Like I had to go through like all of the mail and figure out what stuff needed to be paid. And I like negotiated with all the, companies to like get rid of some of the fees and let's get everything paid off and like, let me fix all your stuff because I'm a type A. And I also grew up in a household with 10 kids where, my mom managed somehow to pay for all the things and she was very creative. Mm-hmm. And so I learned that from her. And also I did accounting forever. Those were, she insisted those were my electives in high school. I didn't get to do dance, which was a huge disservice in my opinion. Like children need to dance. Like children need to do fun things. Do not make them do accounting.
You're listening out there, do not make your children do accounting over dance. No, it's interesting because you say, yes, it's interesting because, I'm in the ADR community. And when I was on a board of this organization, I was in the premier mediation organizations. I was stunned that they had so much infighting, right? So mediators have a lot of inner conflict, ironically, right? It's healer, heal thyself. Then you see that, and, so it's fascinating. Because you can't be. So when you went into meditation, went into these different arts and then coming out then on the other side, how did that shape what you're doing now? How did that then mold your vision in terms of this heart-centered planning and all that? Yeah. To walk us through then, now fast forwarding a little bit to that point when you're, okay, these things started to work, it sounds like, right? Because you're here now. So you went alternative, you went out of the box. We talk about it in other episodes. You kind of went out of what you knew and explored. So keep going from there.
Yeah. So, it was a complete shift. So the kind of foods that I'm eating, the kind of products I put on my body, it's like all got to be like vegan, organic, not the food. I still like meat. But I'm still conscious about, it's got to be grass fed. But I went to this, like, I need to do what's best for me in every aspect and also the planet. So, doing as much as I can, my part to, recycle and buy green and be as eco-conscious as I can and just everything you possibly could do, I guess. Mm-hmm. Could I do a little bit more? Probably. Will I get there? Maybe.
Well, you're touching on ESG too, right? I didn't know what that was until I had heard of it. Scott unpacks that for us, which will be your episode. Actually, I should caution that I recorded Scott's episode before ours, so Scott will be after this episode. If you're wondering who is this Scott guy, you'll see him next, to clarify, since I mentioned it in error earlier. Yeah, so you're touching on, so this naturally came out for you because Scott's will talk about this as far as sequence of release. So that's interesting, right? Because it sounds like, not to get too esoteric for everybody knows, this, for some may not, we're all one, everything's energy. So it sounds like you started to download, as I say, or get insights on what the future of the industry could look like, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I, in 2018, I had now been doing my work for a few years, right? And I've got my healer friends and my shamans and my, all the people that I work with, I have like this team. And
you have a glam squad. You had like I don't know.
Yeah, I got my acupuncturist, like my depending on what kind I need, the biofeedback and there's just a lot of people that are part of this team that help make this work, right? And keeps me from having like my optimal health. Mm-hmm. And so in 2018, I was at the point where I started having autoimmune issues. And I'm like, man, I'm doing all the right things. Like everything is supposed to be working. Like, why is it not working? And I'm still in the industry and still working with mostly the same people. I hadn't gotten rid of the people yet.
Oh, right? So this isn't that breakthrough point we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
So you're still
it was like
kind of there.
Okay. Yeah, I was doing my work and I was becoming my greatest self, but I was still working with people that weren't necessarily like in alignment. Mm-hmm. And so the autoimmune stuff started happening and I at that point realized how much I did not like a lot of the people I was working with. And so it made it really difficult to get up every day you know, like I would get up at 5:30 so I could work out before I started my day. And I got to the point where I was like, what am I even getting up this early for, to like work with these people I don't like in this industry that I can't stand? And it is like just weighing so heavily on me. And I'm like, I'm doing this for the money, and I'm doing it for the wrong reasons. I'm literally doing this because I want to go on these fancy, fun trips. And not all of them were fancy. I stayed in hostels and I did, you know, yurts and things, but there was always some fancy dabbled in there to be like, okay, it's all good. Go get your massage. But I was still putting money into those economies. So, but yeah, I was at that point where I was just like, man, I hate what I'm doing, but I'm really good at it, and I can't see myself doing anything different. So how can I change my situation to keep me in this business, to be able to continue doing what I'm doing in a different way? And then I was in Bali in 2019, and I was doing a meditation, and I got this download about heart-centered planning.
Okay,
and
so
it was like,
real quick for the audience, because I use that word. Some people may be listening and tuning in for the first time. Download, you may have heard the term. Scientifically speaking, brain is an antenna. If what she spoke to earlier, it's all there in different techniques and theories. You access the right hemisphere. If you block your antenna, you can't get into, psychologists call you super consciousness or higher states of awareness. So she's talking about being in a retreat, it sounds like. I know you're going to continue. And then opening up, right? Accessing creativity, holding space for that feminine creative energy. And then boop, the antenna tunes in, and then boop, it pops into your consciousness. So back to
yeah, so I get this, like, create this heart-centered planning series and like change the industry from the inside out. And I'm like, okay, can you give me more? Like, can you give me some instructions, maybe like a playbook? Like,
now you sound like my clients, and you said that to me before. You're like, how do I do that?
Yeah, how the hell do I do that? So I told my friend I was traveling with about it. And she's actually in San Diego. She has a healing collective there. And
wait, so the Sojourn owner?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I love that place. Can we give her a shout out? Is that okay? Can we give her a shout out?
Yeah.
Whitney. I love your facilities. Go ahead.
Yes. Her new one is amazing.
Well, what's her name and what's the facility? Give her a plug.
It's Whitney, and it's Sojourn Healing Collective. And I don't know exactly where they moved to. They were in Bankers Hill.
Oh, wait, that's not there anymore. Oh, okay.
They're in San Diego, but I don't know if it's in Bankers Hill.
Sojourn, Sojourn.
Yes.
If you're in Southern California, if you're in San Diego, check them out. Sojourn. I
know
a lot of healing centers in San Diego. They've got great teachers. I did yoga nidra. Yoga nidras. I did this breath work with this couple there. Mwah. I was like, facility. Anyways, keep going. You're with Whitney. Anyways.
So I was with Whitney. She was actually, our birthdays are a couple days apart. And so this was like our birthday trip, but then she was also scouting locations for a retreat.
Oh, okay.
Because she does some amazing retreats, by the way. And so I'm telling her back at our place that night, like, hey, like this came to me and I don't know what it's all about, but I just needed to like speak it, you know, and because speaking things make it real. So, and I didn't want to keep it to myself. And I didn't know who else to speak it to at this point because, well, I'm in Bali and like, you know, there's nobody else there except for me and her and obviously lots of other people, but like they're not.
This intimacy and trust is there. Yeah, and there is power, you know, behind the words. And I talked about this. The utterance then the 3D realms, and the energy then, you know, becomes real. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
there's science behind it.
Yeah. So I'm like mulling it over the rest of my trip, and then I come back, and at this point I had already moved to Austin. But I was coming back to San Diego to spend some time, and I talked with.
This is when we converge. It sounds like around this time is when our paths reconnect. This would be around 2019. No, 2020, right? 2019, 2020.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so 2019 is when I thought of the thing. So then I come back and I talk to my team about creating this, and I didn't know what it was going to be, what it was going to look like or anything. And then we just started like coming up with different ideas of how it was going to develop. And so it became first like an 8-piece guide series. And it's like 8 principles to live by to attract your ideal clients. And each guide is basically like an experience that I've gone through personally that I've incorporated into my life in order to build this business to attract the clients that I want to work with. So it's like teaching people exactly what I've done. And
wait a second, you mean you had to do the inner work, be the energy you wanted to emit, and then it would work? Now that's ludicrous. I got to do everything outside of me to get success and accomplish. That's nuts.
All about you.
Can you explain that a little bit for those that may be new? What do you mean you changed it within you? What?
Yeah.
You got to do things outside of you. What?
Yeah. Well, whatever you are emitting is what you're going to attract. So you must be what it is that you want. Is that too like?
Plus, it looks a little shitty if you're trying to run around and tell people that you're financially abundant. Yeah, you may make a ton of money. Are the other aspects of your life abundant? Are you spoke of happiness and health and family and all the things that make us human, well-rounded? Yeah. There's beauty to that. Yeah, I think well put. Yeah. So anyway, so the principles. Yeah, please.
Yeah. So the 8 principles are, do you want me to tell you all about them?
What do you mean do I want? Of course, spotlighting leaders. Spotlight.
So we have the importance of being grounded.
Wait a second. Is that the one that I plugged? Wait.
That's the one you did.
Sadeghi was on?
Yeah, that's the one that you did.
If you're going to watch any of them, watch that one.
Right? No, it's actually the most watched one, I think, at this point.
There's reasons for that.
It's because of how we've positioned it on our YouTube.
Well, and you and I have amazing chemistry. And I was going to add, we have amazing chemistry as homies. So there you go.
Anyways. It's true. But the importance of being grounded is the first one. And if you remember back a few minutes ago when I talked about, meditation and that being introduced to me, and that was like really the start of like this whole journey. And then we talk about nourishing your personal power. And with that is like nourishing your body and giving you like what you need to be healthy and happy and thriving. And then we go into, I want to try to remember them in order. It's so silly if I don't. I always skip one also. And so then the importance, what's that?
I said you used to skip them. If you choose to always skip them, that's a choice.
I know that it happens. And I think it's probably because it's one that I need to work on a little bit more.
So nourish, so nourish.
Grounding, power. Nourishing, leading with your heart.
Okay.
So there's one missing in between there.
No, it's personal power, I thought was the one you said that. No, you didn't? Is that the personal power? Here, I have them, I think.
Yeah. So leading with your heart, speaking your truth, knowing your vision, living your purpose, and building community. And the importance of community. So all of these are building on each other to get to that end result, because your community is literally like your ecosystem, right? And so when we talk about community, we're not just talking about your friends and your family, we're talking about your clients. And like having people in that circle that you want to hang out with them, you want to do things with them. Like when you see their number come up, you want to be like, yay, like they're calling. I want to talk to them, you know? Like I want to hear what's going on in their lives. I want to be a part of what's happening with them.
I know you call it that. You may call it that in these principles. Tribe is another synonym that I use, is these people. And in fact, I think it was Daniel Pink, don't quote me, or no, Seth Godin in the book Purple Cow, which revolutionized marketing. You may have heard of it, Steph. Some marketing people may have, which then posited that the entire world of marketing is shifting. And then what we want to do is we want to create like almost like an obsession with our product. And instead of wrapping marketing around the product, or no, making the product to fit the marketing, we wrap the marketing around you. And he talks a little bit about that. He touches upon, getting these followers or making it. And so I think you're touching on stuff that's really, really cutting edge in terms of this leadership in the business space, right? Because it does upend decades, if not centuries, of ways of doing things.
Yeah. Yeah. It's getting rid of like that manipulative way of marketing, right? Mm-hmm. You're connecting with people on like a different level. Like I talk about it being like on a soul level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's that is very much. It's bringing soul back to business, bringing soul back to leadership, and bringing the heart back to planning. So without unpacking the principles, so that way they go to check them out. And where can they find out more about the principles?
They can download the guides from our website, theannuityconsultants.com,
which will be below.
Yeah, and there is a link that says heart-centered planning, and so there are PDF guides that you can download. They're anywhere from 8 to 12 pages. And in the back of each guide, there's resources for each of those topics. So like different documentaries, books, blogs, all kinds of information about whatever I'm talking about. And then next to the download, there is a link to the webinar series it corresponds with each of the topics. And we're now in season 2. We're actually halfway through season 2, because I mean, these topics are so broad and people's perspectives are so different that we're just going to keep on going. And I'm finding more people in the insurance and financial space that are embodying this. And so I'm starting to have people that are connected to the industry come in and talk about how they've incorporated that principle into their business. Which is why I had Scott on, because Scott is with Deutsche Bank and he is the yogi banker, and he's been able to incorporate, yoga, meditation, and mindfulness into the bank. It's like
the largest banks.
So cool.
What you're doing is also cool. Amazing too.
Yeah.
Okay, so then this is the heart-centered planning, and it's so why? What's your vision? What do you see your legacy in this?
Yeah. So my vision with this is to change the industry from the inside out.
Okay.
Right. So rather than trying to fight the beast from the outside, I'm infiltrating it, sort of like a ninja. And I believe that because change only comes from the inside, right? That you have to do it from the inside. There's no other way to do it. And I am these people, right? I'm just a little bit different version of them. And they all have the ability to do this if they want to,
Where do you see the industry going and what your legacy will be in it?
We're bringing more love, compassion, and kindness to this industry, which will positively impact the world. Because this financial system, this beast, impacts everything. I mean, absolutely everything. And it's not just in the United States, because we are a global society. It impacts everything. So if we can do our part, this one person makes a change and impacts 2 people, and then 4. It's like a domino effect, and we can like literally change it. So we have the ability.
So then, yeah, definitely. I love that message. So what would that look like? So you gave me the essence. So if you were to tap in and say, when you leave this plane, which is another way I formulate the legacy question, what will it look like if all of that love, light, and heart from the inside is influenced? What will it look like? What do you want to leave behind when you leave this realm?
It would be a beautiful world. Like
it for us. What would the financial services in the world then as a result of that look like?
I mean, people are doing things for the right reasons. They are being in service of others. They are helping impact people in a more positive way. And so you will see there will be a smaller gap between the haves and have-nots, right? There will be more equality because things would be developed for everybody. It wouldn't be just for the ultra wealthy people. There's got to be balance. And that's what I was talking about too with the masculine and feminine energy. If we as individuals can balance that energy and bring equality to like the masses, imagine what that will do for all systems, not just the financial system. So.
I love that.
No.
That's why I knew. I was like, Steph, what you're doing is amazing. And it's going to proliferate. And here you are describing the proliferation byproduct, so to speak, or what we'll leave behind.
And, I understand that some people cannot get on board with it because they have been conditioned to be who they are for so long, and they're not going to change. But also they're getting old. So
you're saying what I used to say in a funny way is like the dinosaurs of the legal industry are dying out. I mean, you see legal, you have the pro-am law firms, and when the crash happened a few years ago, and then we started to see the ivory tower effect impact of big law billings, and I'm sure in your industry as well, equally in different ways. Yeah, so it's interesting. Yeah, so I echo that sentiment. It's not to badmouth anybody. We have love and respect, and invite all that in. It's this notion of forgiving for they know not what they do. It's when you get encrusted and set in a different way, there's no churning back, and that's okay. Some people maybe too, what do they call it? Sunk cost bias in psychology. You have too much sunk cost. You go, I've invested too much into this shitty lifestyle. And yes, I'm going to say judgmentally that word. So if you're listening, it is not a good lifestyle because nobody's ever told you that there's another way. And that's what we've been doing in a very in your face way, so to speak.
Totally. Well, and you see it too with like conscious capitalism or spiritual capitalism, or, the way that people are spending are different. They want to invest in companies that are doing good things for the planet. This weekend, I had a brunch with a group of people, and one of the guys that was there, he used to run a bank, but he's now running a hedge fund, and he is doing his work. He is, doing the retreats and the plant medicines and becoming this. He was exactly what I was talking about, the kind of guy that you would run into in this industry. And he even talked about crying in the shower after his last retreat that he did. And being
cry on camera on his own show. You won that award, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. She wins the award for first time. I was waiting for when those tear ducts were going to get flowing. So this is you actually. I mean, this is beautiful. Sorry to interject, because you're talking about hanging out with tribe that are not only friends, call them that. They're also here equally with this passion to change the world. I mean, that's amazing. I bet people who are listening are like, wait, what? That's waiting for me on the other side? I can make money and make an impact? What?
Yeah, I know. It's incredible. I mean, we as humans have the ability to do so much, and I'm not waiting for somebody to make the change, right? I want to make this change. I want to be that person. I want to be part of a movement. I know it's not my responsibility solely, but I can do my part, and other people can see it, and they will, do their thing. So,
Steph, you are doing it. You are doing it. You are.
I'm
a fan of words. It was all will. You are.
I am.
You have started a movement. It's right next to you, heart-centered planning.
True.
And you have been in alignment around it as far as I've known you. So that's beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anything else you feel inspired to share or wanted to, say to the audience?
Around transformation?
Anything. I mean, in terms of your mission. So let's go if there's anything else on your mission and vision, because I know we've kind of went out of order. We always flow. Yeah. So we've covered your transformation, how it shaped you, your mission and vision in terms of heart-centered planning, why that's important in the industry, how it shapes, what you want your legacy to look like. Is there anything else on those topics or anything else that you'd like to share from your heart center?
For when it comes to the work, when it hurts the most and you feel like you can't go any further, push through. Like, you have no idea what is on the other side. Like, don't stop. Do not stop.
Don't stop till you get enough. Come on. Don't stop. True. Don't stop till you get to the other side. Come on.
And I have lots of work still to do. I'm not saying that I am done, and I don't think I'll ever be done. It's a lifelong process. I used to compare it to like an onion, but onions are gross. And also I can't have onions because of what, my system is just like, no, thank you. So I now refer it as like a rose, right? So each time you you peel back a petal, you've done some work, right? And what we're trying to get to is like that little pristine bud in the middle. And that's where we're going with this.
Can I share something?
Yeah.
I feel like you've arrived at that pristine bud, my soul sister.
Thank you.
Anything else? Stephani Lucas's heart.
No.
Well, do you have any inspired quote or any final words for the audience before we wrap up?
Follow your heart. Yeah. Do what makes you happy. And don't care what other people think. I'm going to say fuck those people, but also that's not very heart-centered.
We say we honor our shadow and our light, and we forgive them for they know not what they do. And when we have a human experience and we have a trigger or a reaction, we go, that's okay too. Because sometimes it's frustrating to be a leader in the trenches. And that's why
it's so frustrating.
That's why I honor you. I've been in the trenches in the legal movement a while. And to see the movement burgeoning now, it's refreshing. I can only imagine. I mentioned it on Carrie's episode, which will be a few episodes out, Carrie Raleigh. Some of these way showers, we call them, that they come before and start these movements. It's people see the results of those movements. They see Gandhi's byproduct. They don't see what Gandhi had to go through to become Gandhi. They didn't see what Stephani had to go through to get here 1.5, 2 years in, where people are starting to pay attention. People are starting to look. People are starting to listen. And that's tremendous respect for that, tremendous love. And I honor that about you. So yeah, follow your heart. And if you're a financial planner and your heart leads you to the heart-centered planning series or annuity consultants, then your heart is telling you that you're ready. Isn't it, Steph? That you're ready for a more abundant life, not only financial abundance, a more abundant life all around. And that pristine rosebud right there, to use her own analogy and reflect it back, is what will happen. You get your ROI and your ROH, shall we call it, a return on a heart.
Yeah.
So thank you all for being here. Thank you, Steph, so much for bringing about tears of joy. You didn't make anything cry. For bringing about and inspiring tears of joy. And I honor you, I salute you, and I thank you for doing what you're doing. I thank those of you that stayed to listen to the whole episode. If you're new to this concept, if you're new to any of this and you stayed, give yourself a pat on the back and really feel into your being and salute yourself, because you're already on your way. If you think you're like, Haas, I don't know any of this stuff, get out of your head, get into your heart. I'm Haas Sadeghi. This is Stephani, heart-centered planning, pristine rosebud Lucas. And we thank you for joining us here on the Vulnerable Power Show. If you liked what you heard, share this episode. Why? Because we have a collective mission to uplift the planet. So when you share this, you share that mission, and you are doing your part by simply supporting and sharing and listening in. So with love, with heart, and with blessings, thank each of you for tuning in.